The CIA only worked against the opposition. Regardless of what nationality came in contact with them, that's another matter. It did not happen in the United States.
Was your branch of the CIA
Yeah.
involved in the surveillance of American citizens here inside the United States?
Absolutely not.
Did you resign completely voluntarily, or were you in some way induced to resign?
I'm very unhappy to leave the agency. No, I don't.
Surveillance overseas.
Would you be careful, because I just shaved this moment. I've been up all night, literally on the phone. Now, what is... This man has more... What is this?
It's an electronic device.
I see. I'm not familiar with them. I mean, it's much more perfected than anything we have in the agency.
Why did you resign?
I think the time comes to all men when they no longer serve their country.
As determined by whom?
By themselves and their superiors. It's not my nature. And I don't think I have any horns.
No, a scapegoat.
Well, I mean, it depends on... I mean, you said goat.
Scapegoat.
No, I do not say ba.
Sir, did you have any association with the plumbers unit in the White House?
Absolutely not.
Was the agency involved in the kind of domestic surveillance that has been portrayed in the news reports?
Well, explain yourself.
Anyway, violated its charter.
My feeling is that it has not.
Could there be a difference of interpretation?
But I'm speaking only on behalf of a group of men for whom I have the highest respect. And I can say as to their activities, because I cannot speak for the agency.
Could there be a difference of interpretation about the powers under a vague charter and vague directives in which you might have carried out certain actions which others might regard as illegal?
I would not so construe it. If you had information on an American who met with another country's agent while overseas, what happened to that information when this individual returned to this country?
It would go to the proper authority.
Who would be?
Which would be the head of any department or agency in government.
Did you at any time receive any instructions directly from White House staff members during the Nixon administration, instructions that were not fed through channels through the director?
I'm sorry.
Did you at any
time... the last part I didn't get.
I'm just wondering if you received any instructions from President Nixon's staff assistants that came to you directly rather than through channels, through the...
Everything came.
Did you report all your actions then to the director in terms of any undertakings that the White House may have requested?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that the foreign policy of this country...
The president to decide. Since I'm resigning, my own view is that détente is a euphemism for peaceful coexistence. And I think you will probably live longer than I will, and you'll learn the result of it.
Are you suggesting that these years in the CIA, you have watched President Nixon, Secretary Kissinger, and now President Ford take the United States down a misguided path?
As I told you earlier, Mr. Shore, you kept me up too many hours to 3 a.m. watching public television. And I don't know whether I like you or don't like you for that reason. Obviously, when the nuclear stalemate, one assumes it is, that there are fixed parameters of relationships. I am not in the political business. I have seen no change in the Soviets at any time, whether it be in the Middle East or in the whole world that we consume, where the Soviets have ever deviated from their desire to take over
I notice on this
the world.
I notice on this Christmas Eve that your family is not with you. Is that a result of all these unhappy events?
Yes.
Sir, Dan asked you if you...
God bless you.
I don't know if Merry Christmas is exactly.
Well,
Sounds ironic, but Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Good to see you. All the best.
Thank you. Same to you, sir. Thank you.
And I'm terribly sick of you waiting here. And I really do mean it. See you.
Which car are you taking?
Well, as far as somebody's car. I wish I could do something for you all.
You have.
I've done nothing.
You have. You come out and you
Champagne.
you got the.
Oh, that's the reason I'm leaving. But, no, I mean, Mr. Shore, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. You've been very kind today. Good luck.
Same to you. And I'm sorry to keep you out here. I tell you, I don't think we should advertise this Mercedes. I mean, it's only borrowed. We've got to worry about Detroit. Now, this really is embarrassing. Well, God bless you all. I think you're giving Mercedes a little free advertising. But again, apologies for keeping you waiting so long. Thank you. All the best. I apologize that you've been waiting out here, but no one has left me dealing with minorities. Bringing them in the organization is a part of our statutory duty.
Earlier, in a rambling 4-hour conversation without cameras, Angleton was more specific. He said the CIA would watch Americans overseas who had contact with known communist agents, but he insisted all such information was turned over to the FBI once those Americans returned home. Angleton said there were a very few instances when some follow-up surveillance was done in this country, but he said it was done in cooperation with the FBI and the Justice Department, and with the FBI leading the investigation. Roger Peterson, ABC News, Arlington, Virginia. Obviously under a strain and showing the effects of 2 sleepless nights, Angleton apparently has told several versions of his story. He repeated to us his denial of any wrongdoing by the CIA and that he resigned for the good of the agency since his cover was blown. But Angleton added he had strong disagreements with CIA Director William Colby and left a hint he'd been asked to leave.
Well, I wouldn't want to go that far and to describe what your taxpayers' money goes into for your own national security. But we operate overseas.
Could you say why you resigned?
Are you still out here?
Did you jump or were you pushed?
I wasn't pushed out a window.
Were you?
Now, I can't have for all this attention.
Were there at any time, did the Central Intelligence Agency surveil Americans? Or under what circumstances would they? The agency has in any you felt that you were a scapegoat. I wonder,
I'm
There's
not a
already been
scapegoat.
there's already been a cry for Mr. Helms to be fired as ambassador. How do you feel about it?
Earlier, in a rambling 4-hour conversation without cameras, Angleton was more specific. He said the CIA would watch Americans overseas who had contact with known communist agents, but he insisted all such information was turned over to the FBI once those Americans returned home. Try it again. Take 2. Earlier, in a rambling 4-hour conversation without cameras, Angleton was more specific. He said the CIA would watch Americans overseas who had contact with known communist agents, but he insisted all such information was turned over to the FBI once those Americans returned home. Angleton said there were a very few instances when more surveillance was necessary in this country, but he insisted those... I knew it. 3. Rolling, this is 4. Earlier, in a rambling 4-hour conversation without cameras, Angleton was more specific. He said the CIA would watch Americans overseas who were having contact with known communist agents, but he insisted all such information was turned over to the FBI once those Americans returned home. Angleton said there were a very few instances when This is 5. Earlier, in a rambling 4-hour conversation without cameras, Angleton was more specific. He said the CIA would watch Americans overseas who had contact with known communist agents, but he insisted all such information was turned over to the FBI once those Americans returned to this country. Angleton said there were a very few instances when some follow-up surveillance was done in this country, but he said it was done in cooperation with the FBI and the Justice Department, with the FBI leading the investigation. Roger Peterson, ABC News, Arlington, Virginia. Yeah. Okay.
And particularly Alan Dulles, that the broadening of the concepts
Good. Possible close. Take 1. Go ahead. All right. Possible close. Take 1. Hey, I can hear you. Again with 1. Earlier, in a rambling 4-hour conversation without cameras, Angleton was more specific.